Earlier this week at TennoCon, Warframe developer Digital Extremes revealed their next major project. It is a brand new, free-to-play, open-world action hybrid MMORPG that they are calling Soulframe. Not straying too far from their comfortable naming conventions. The game is said, according to them, to be rooted in a fantasy world that's heavily influenced by themes of nature, restoration, and exploration. And also, from the initial reveal footage, Soulframe clearly has that distinct Digital Extremes visual aesthetic with some at times creepy looking character designs. And this reveal has me really excited for a lot of reasons. I'll say this, for all of its faults, I still consider Warframe one of the better free-to-play gaming experiences I've ever had. Overall, I just have really enjoyed playing the game on and off over the years. So the idea that they are making a more action-focused fantasy game that's also an MMORPG to boot, that is a surprise announcement that I was not expecting, and I am pretty pumped for the potential of what it could be, like what this game could turn into. Digital Extremes have taken Warframe in a more MMO-like direction through their various updates over the years, but still at its core, the game has remained very much so a lobby-based title where you pick and zone into a mission. But a full-blown MMO from this company is something I'm really interested in seeing. So I have scrounged together every bit of information revealed about the game so far, from official channels to developer interviews and the like, to find out all there is to know, and that's exactly what I will be covering here in today's video. Before we jump into all of that though, get a quick word from today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Raycon and their affordable, high-quality wireless earbuds. Their everyday earbuds have gotten a real nice boost, offering 8 hours of continuous playtime and a 32-hour battery life. On top of that, they come with a ton of really neat features as well, including noise isolation mode for blocking any unwanted background sound. They've got earbud tap functions for navigating whatever it is you're listening to, and high quality audio stereo sound. On top of all of that, they offer that same high quality sound as other leading wireless earbuds, but at half the price. Personally, just about every day when I'm taking the dog for a walk, I like listening to various podcasts, and Raycon's earbuds have been perfect for doing just that, on top of I guess anything else that I want to listen to. So if you're interested in learning more, go ahead and check out the link in the description below, or go to buyraycon.com/force and you can get 15% off your Raycon purchase. Okay, so let's get right into it. Now, we first actually got wind of this game earlier in the year. Digital Extremes had filed a trademark for Soulframe back in May, which kicked off a whole lot of speculation as to what it could possibly be. And well, now we know. As mentioned, at this year's TennoCon, which took place earlier in the week. This is their annual celebration of all things Warframe. Digital Extremes wrapped up the show by revealing their next major project, Soulframe. They didn't actually say much of anything about the game during this event, just revealing its name, and then also releasing a 5-minute cinematic trailer. However, from the official channels, places like the video description information and this blog post, we got a good overview of what the game. They describe it as follows. Soulframe is an entirely new game from Digital Extremes veterans that will feature open world co-op gameplay in its own independent and immersive fantasy experience. While still in early development, Soulframe is a free-to-play action hybrid MMORPG that features an entirely unique world with themes of nature, restoration, and exploration. Okay, so we got a free-to-play game, action hybrid MMORPG, open world setting with like a nature fantasy focus. Cool, sounds good to me. Now, taking a look at the trailer itself, we do see a few interesting things here, mostly around the game's aesthetics and tone. There's this very distinct, again, odd at times, Digital Extremes character design. There's also this heavy fantasy vibe. We see things like a sword buried in some stone and this massive dire wolf. We've got a whole bunch of kind of like mystical and magical elements. There's the medieval and feudal inspired armor with like these layered bits of fabric and steel. Even the font work that they use in the game's logo, I find quite appealing as it pulls from kind of a more old school fantasy styling. But you know, we have to keep in mind this is just a cinematic trailer for a game that is in the very early stages of development. So if nothing else, it's like a tone piece, and that's pretty much about it. But outside of those official sources, we actually got a ton of information and details from an interview that was done on the Washington Post, where Soulframe directors Jeff Crooks and Steve Sinclair sat down and talked quite a bit in depth about the game. So for starters, they said that they consider Soulframe less of a sequel and more of a sister to Warframe, saying the game will share Warframe's focus on cooperative player versus environment combat and procedurally generated environments, but it will be the mirror universe version of Warframe. This will apply to the setting, where Warframe is a unique flesh mech powered spin on the sci-fi genre. Soulframe will be a suitably strange take on fantasy, which we of course got a glimpse of in that trailer, but this will also apply to the gameplay. Where Warframe is focused on shooting, this one's focused on melee. Where Warframe is super fast, crazy high speed, this one is going to be a lot more slow and heavy, but it still has a lot of similarities to the genre that we have experience in. Now, this particular quote has got me real excited. I'd say that for as much as I have enjoyed Warframe over the years, I've always wondered what a more grounded, less frenetic version of the game could look like. And I'm talking about like all of the dashing and diving, double jumps, air gliding, and just the crazy fast movement that late game Warframe seems to focus on, sprinting through levels to quickly get to objectives, or blowing up enemies as fast as possible. This is mostly what the end game meta seems to be, or at least that was the case for the last time I played the game seriously. So if Soulframe is going to be, as they say, more slow and heavy with more of a melee focus in this open fantasy world, I mean, that sounds really, really good to me. They went on to discuss some of the major inspirations for the game's setting. Soulframe's world, as proposed, might be its most interesting character. The game will focus on themes of nature, restoration, and adventure as inspired by the works like Princess Mononoke and the NeverEnding story, specifically the collision between industry and nature. Now, this Princess Mononoke influence is clear as day in that first trailer, and can I just say, it is such an amazing world to pull inspiration from. Same goes with the NeverEnding story, just a very cool theme and setting. All of this also turns out to be incorporated into the game's world and the game's structure. They said the conceit in Soulframe is that the world itself is a little angry about what's been done to it, and the grounds underneath tend to shift throughout the day. So there's going to be proceduralism within the cave networks and crevices and so on underneath the world. And this gets me thinking that while the open world might have some structure to it, some handcrafted elements, those caves or dungeons or whatever are in the like subterranean aspects will have that procedural layout, as they say, which opens up a real lot of possibilities for keeping what is probably going to be the game's loot or material farming elements fresh for a long time to come. That is what Warframe does after all, procedurally piecing together rooms and areas to make it so that every run isn't exactly identical as the last. They go further on in the article saying that the hub world will be open, more akin to Warframe's recently added open world planets than the early foundation of more corridors and space stations. And the studio also wants Soulframe to have much more focus on exploration than Warframe ever had, trying to create a world that feels more alive. Crooks added to this in saying that I'm chasing that short session but high immersion thing, where you sign in and you come out of your yurt and you are where you last signed off, but the world feels like it's been going on without you. Now, with a name like Soulframe, the obvious conclusion that some people might jump to is that this game pulls a lot from the Soul series. However, they did touch on this, saying that even though the game has more slow-paced, melee-focused combat, and yes, it is called Soulframe, that isn't meant as a direct reference to the FromSoft Soul series. Sinclair said, I think it certainly isn't an inspiration for the initial ideas or what we wanted to do, but Elden Ring has absolutely been a subject of some conversation, maybe to do with camera, maybe to do with how excellent their combat pacing is. So while the Soul series wasn't initially a major point of inspiration for Soulframe, they have definitely taken note of what Elden Ring has brought to the table and might incorporate some elements of it, whether that is the camera placement or combat pacing or anything else. Now, that said, they've been fairly quiet on detailing any specifics when it comes to Soulframe's gameplay, and a lot of that just comes down to the fact that they are still very early days. In fact, their initial idea and the basic concepts for this game started coming together in 2019, but they haven't really begun any serious work on Soulframe just until this past February. Now, this of course means we are likely a long ways away from a finished, finalized version of the game. Why did they reveal it so early? Well, according to them, our work has been extremely community driven. It's way too early to announce Soulframe, actually, But in terms of transparency and making sure they understand how we think, we tend to be a lot more open than most studios. That said, even with it being early on, it is likely we will be seeing and possibly even playing the game sooner than you might expect. Similar to their regular Warframe behind the scenes Twitch streams, they do plan to give fans a look behind the curtains of Soulframe as well, and might be doing this very, very soon. They claim that Digital Extreme diehards will even get to play a version of Soulframe within a year. Now, that's not saying within this year, it's saying within a year, so that means sometime between now and July 2023, some people will be getting some sort of a hands-on time with the game. It'll probably be very early. It might even lack any real visual polish whatsoever, but the basic bones, people are gonna get a chance to check out. Sinclair talked to this, saying the thing that we want to try to do is similar to Warframe, which is watch us make the game and get your hands on the rough bits and then tell us how you feel. Now, when I go back and rewatch videos that I made on Warframe in the early days, back in the beta, like in early 2013, it is practically unrecognizable compared to what the game has become and what it is today. Things have just evolved and changed so much, and it seems like they have a similar plan in mind for Soulframe. They're going to get people in on the ground floor pretty darn early, testing, playing the game, and providing feedback, and then making adjustments and changes based on that. And I think part of that is actually what plays into one of the main reasons I am excited for Soulframe. It just comes down to Digital Extremes and the path and the progression that Warframe has taken over the years. About 10 years ago, they started letting people play the game in early playable builds, and it has evolved and changed so much. At its core, Warframe, I think, is a really good and fun game to play. For a lot of people, it's considered one of the better free-to-play games on the market. People will have their varying opinions on what is or isn't good when it comes to the free-to-play genre, but I have at least always personally felt that Warframe was a game I could easily jump back into. Well, not so easily, but I could jump back into and have a good time with, even if it was a little complicated and confusing. Warframe has still been a game that I can come back to once a year and still get some enjoyment and entertainment out of. And yeah, the game has been around for like 10 or so years. It has been constantly getting updates. This is another thing that gives me a lot of confidence and just enthusiasm for what they're working on next. Even just most recently, they announced that they're adding a 4th open world zone to the game and a bunch of other new features and systems that were officially revealed and discussed at this most recent TennoCon. And for all of these reasons, for being a good, fun game to play, for being a free-to-play title, and for having the support that it has had over these years, Warframe's got a very ardent fan base. It is one of those games where you will regularly hear players talk about it and the fact that they've got like thousands of hours logged. In fact, to this day, it's pretty huge. Like the average daily peak concurrent player count hovers around 60 to 70,000 concurrent players daily for a 10-plus-year-old game. It's pretty crazy. And yeah, I have always really enjoyed coming back to the game, even with the difficulties that means. Some of the biggest criticisms boil down to the fact that newcomers or even returning players can feel a little lost and confused, partially because of all of those new things and changes and adjustments and updates that they add over the years. It leaves you coming back not sure where to start or what to do next. And then also, being a free-to-play game, part of that also means that the game is a bit grindy. There are certainly many aspects of Warframe that require a lot of grinding if you never plan to spend any money. Finding that balance really comes down to what people think about these games, right? How much grind versus how much of that can be monetized and you can spend money on to bypass that grinding elements. But like I said, it's one of those things where everyone will draw their line at a different spot when it comes to free-to-play games, especially free-to-play games like this. This isn't a free-to-play competitive multiplayer game where you're buying season passes and loot boxes and skins. This is a free-to-play PvE grinding game, so people will have their threshold of what's okay and what's not with it when it comes to how much grinding. But overall, my general impression when I think about Warframe is a positive one, because it's a game that I've been able to play and come back to and have fun whenever I do. And that is a big part of the reason why I am so pumped and so interested in Soulframe. And then also, haven't really focused much on it so far in the discussion, but yes, they're making an MMO. I mean, they call it themselves. This is, again, part of the official press release release. They talk about this game as an MMORPG, an open world MMORPG that's focused on cooperative PvE gameplay. That is very exciting for me, a huge fan of the MMO genre, and feeling like there's not much else on the horizon, really. There's only a handful of games. You know, we've got a couple of those Kickstarter titles, Ashes of Creation probably being the one that people are most enthused for, but big budget games from studios with deep pockets, not a lot of those. We got the Runeterra MMO from Riot, and that is more or less it. So another contender entering the genre and taking a crack at MMOs, that has me very excited. And I think I wasn't expecting it, but the idea of Digital Extremes going off the success of Warframe and making a fantasy MMO, that's pretty exciting. For me, that is pretty darn exciting. There's a lot of potential there, I think, and I think that they could be a serious contender, really, is what it comes down to. So when can we get to play? Well, as we mentioned, they are still very early on in development, but they do plan to be very transparent and let people get their hands on it very early. You can currently register to test the game as well as reserve your name over on the Soulframe website. Although at the moment, you should note that there's like this passcode to gain access. It's a pretty simple matching puzzle. You match the symbols with the letters, and there's just like a couple of letters for you to guess on your own. But if you don't feel like doing that work, here's the code right here. This game is still in early development, but we're going to be getting a look behind the curtains, and that has me very, very excited. So there you go. That is the most recent news on the upcoming Soulframe. Hope you guys enjoyed the video and the recap of what we know so far. Lots of potential here. I cannot wait to learn more. That's going to do it for today. Thank you guys as always for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.